You know, when you look back at the really grand eras of human history, we almost always mark them by the sheer scale of the monuments they left behind.
Right, like the physical stuff that survives.
Exactly, like the Egyptians engineered the pyramids, moving millions of tons of limestone, or the Romans, they laid down these massive aqueducts that just fundamentally altered the flow of water and, well, civilization itself.
Yeah, and then you fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, and we just blanketed the Earth in sprawling networks of steel and steam and telegraph wires.
Right, these were massive physical testaments to human ambition, and for a long time it kind of felt like the digital age was building its own equivalent monument, you know?
Like a digital library of Alexandria?
Yes. We were assembling this vast, incredibly messy, but fundamentally honest library of human experience. But if you look at the landscape of the internet today, for you, for me, for anyone scrolling, it feels less like we're building a grand library
Yeah.
and more like we're constructing like a funhouse mirror.
Oh, a staggeringly expensive, energy-hungry funhouse mirror.
Exactly. One designed exclusively to just distort everything it reflects, because the central text we are unpacking in this deep dive today, and welcome, by the way, to this deep dive, is this brilliant, biting piece of satire published on May 20th, 2026.
Titled Netizen. Top minds in tech give us manipulated videos.
Right. And it makes a rather terrifying argument about where we are right now.
It really does.
Yeah.
It basically argues that we have taken the greatest concentration of computational power and capital and raw human genius in the history of our species, and we are using it almost exclusively to manipulate reality.
Which is just a wild premise to start with.
It is. But the satire is really just the entry point into a much deeper, almost overwhelming archive of material we're looking at today. Because our primary source isn't just this one satirical essay by the author, Paramendra.
Hey, there's so much more to it.
Yeah, we are also pulling from their extensive bibliographies, their sidebars, the blog tags, and this massive catalog of philosophical and geopolitical writings that surround this single post.
So the mission here today isn't just to laugh at a joke about fake videos. The mission is to dissect this profound dissonance. We have to understand this massive widening gap between humanity's unprecedented technological capability and the, well, trivial, almost insulting applications we are choosing to pursue.
And the author anchors this entire critique in a very specific, recognizable kind of nostalgia. They really force you to look backward to a time when the internet was, in their words, honest and democratic.
Yeah, they described that early era as representing civilization at its peak, which is a bold claim.
It is. But the prime example they use to define peak civilization is not, Wikipedia. It's not the mapping of the human genome.
No, it's a cat falling off a couch.
Exactly. A cat falling off a couch. Or a cat terrified of a cucumber. Or staring into the void like a middle manager during quarterly planning.
Right, the imagery is so mundane, but it illustrates a really critical mechanical difference between the internet of the past and the internet of 2026, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, because the author is drawing a hard line between honest media and synthetic media. Think about it. To capture a cat falling off a couch back in the day, it required virtually zero compute power.
Right, no massive capital investment.
None. It was just pure, unfiltered human observation of the physical world. A person held up a phone, captured light hitting a sensor, and uploaded an objective record of something that actually happened.
It was a shared, verifiable reality. And you contrast that with the arrival of what the author calls the top minds in technology.
The brightest engineers of our generation.
Right. These brilliant engineers looked at this massive library of honest, organic, human experience and apparently asked one terrifying question. They asked, what if none of this were real?
And the sheer mechanics of what it takes to synthesize reality rather than observe it is staggering. I mean, we are talking about millions of graphics processing units, or GPUs, just humming in these massive server farms.
And for anyone who doesn't know, a GPU isn't just like a basic computer chip, right?
No, not at all. It's a highly specialized piece of hardware, originally designed to render complex 3D graphics by performing thousands of mathematical calculations simultaneously. But now, we've strung tens of thousands of these together into supercomputers.
And the energy draw is insane.
It's unbelievable. They are consuming electricity on a scale that literally rivals medium-sized nations. They require specialized cooling infrastructure, millions of gallons of water, and billions of dollars in silicon fabrication.
All of this physical, earth-moving infrastructure operating day and night.
Exactly. And the output, what are we getting for all of that?
Right.
We're using it to generate a video of a fake koala bear riding a skateboard.
Okay, wait. Let me push back on this a little bit. Isn't the author being incredibly short-sighted here?
How so?
Well, if you read the history of technology, tinkering with a toy has almost always been the precursor to actual world-changing breakthroughs. I mean, the Wright brothers were essentially building dangerous bicycles with wings before they conquered human flight.
Sure, that's true.
And we didn't invent the internet just for serious academic research. It scaled globally because people wanted to play games and chat in forums and share media. So generating a fake cat or a koala on a skateboard, it seems like it's just the training wheels, you know?
The sandbox.
Right. It's a sandbox where the engineers figure out the physics of the system before they move on to the serious stuff.
And play is absolutely the sandbox of innovation. You're not wrong about that. But the author's critique zeroes in on the disproportionate scale of the resources dedicated to this specific type of play.
Ah, the scale.
Yeah, and the massive disconnect in the rhetoric used to justify it. It's one thing for two brothers to tinker in a bicycle shop.
Mm.
It is entirely another for the most powerful corporations on Earth to monopolize global energy grids just to generate digital illusions.
Using the smartest mathematical minds of a generation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the satire becomes incredibly biting when the author names the specific billionaires leading this supposed revolution. They really highlight the gap between their messianic marketing and the actual products they deliver.
Yeah, the author pulls absolutely no punches when roasting the titans of Silicon Valley in 2026. Like, they start with Sundar Pichai.
Oh, the Google CEO.
Right. The author imagines him waking up every single morning, looking at the vast resources of one of the most powerful companies in human history, and asking himself, how can we make a video of a hamster podcast look even more cinematic?
Yes, it's just a hilarious image. And then the focus shifts to Elon Musk.
No, of course.
The author points out that Musk is building data centers with enough compute power to theoretically simulate entire civilizations, right?
Yeah.
To model the physics of the universe. And yet the hyper-realistic deepfake of Abraham Lincoln giving a 5-star review to a new brand of protein powder.
It's so absurd. And then finally, they bring up Sam Altman. The author describes Altman speaking with this extreme solemnity about the destiny of the human species and existential risk and the dawn of artificial general intelligence.
He's always very serious about it.
Very serious. Meanwhile, out in the real world, millions of users are taking his frontier AI systems and prompting them to create videos of penguins in little suits running hedge funds.
The juxtaposition is brilliant because it exposes this massive misalignment of incentives. You have tech leaders utilizing the rhetoric of global saviors, but the tangible consumer use cases of these world-altering products are entirely trivial.
Completely trivial. And the author brings up the failed promises of science fiction to really hammer this home.
Yeah, mid-20th century sci-fi promised humanity flying cars, immortality, lunar colonies, or, at the very least, an automated calendar assistant that could actually prevent a double-booked meeting.
Right. We wanted mundane, practical solutions to physical problems. And instead, the defining technological achievement of 2026 is a historically accurate, photorealistic live stream of Napoleon doing a 12-step morning skincare routine.
Which nobody asked for.
Nobody asked for it. So to think about your own feed this morning as you're listening to this, when you scroll past these massive AI-generated spectacles, do you feel like you are looking at the destiny of our species?
Or does it feel like you're staring into a highly advanced, incredibly energy-intensive toy box?
Exactly. Because this isn't just happening in a vacuum. The billionaires are just the public face of this movement. There is a massive, deeply entrenched financial ecosystem actively incentivizing the creation of these digital toys.
Oh, the venture capital world.
Yes.
The VC world is the engine driving this misallocation. And the author's breakdown of VC culture is just surgically precise.
Yeah, they are part of the whole piece.
They provide this translation guide for modern Silicon Valley pitch decks.
Yeah.
Stripping away all that dense academic linguistic camouflage that startups use to secure hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for fundamentally frivolous apps.
Let's actually run through these translations because they illustrate exactly how the industry talks to itself. It's fascinating.
Let's do it.
So when a startup pitch deck claims they are building a foundational multimodal reality synthesis infrastructure.
The author translates that directly to, "We made fake videos faster."
Right. And when a founder pitches a universal video generation platform,
They are dressing up the reality, which is simply, the Pope can now breakdance.
yes, And when a company promises to deliver context-aware temporal world models.
The translation is, here's Batman eating tacos in Mumbai.
Okay, but wait, what actually is a temporal world model? Because the jargon sounds incredibly sophisticated, and I imagine the underlying math is actually quite complex, right?
Oh, the underlying computer science is profoundly complex. A temporal world model essentially requires an artificial intelligence to understand object permanence and the laws of physics over time.
Object permanence, like how a baby learns that a toy still exists when you hide it.
Exactly. So if an AI video shows a character walking behind a pillar, the AI has to mathematically calculate that the character still exists. It has to maintain their mass, the lighting, their trajectory, so they emerge on the other side of the pillar in a realistic way.
Wow.
It is an extraordinary technical hurdle.
Wow.
But the author's point is that we are expending immense intellectual capital to achieve this mastery of physics in a simulated environment, purely so a fictional billionaire in a bat suit can eat street food flawlessly.
It's like watching a team of molecular biologists and chemists spend a decade in a state-of-the-art laboratory, right? Utilizing advanced CRISPR gene editing and complex molecular gastronomy.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
And they finally call a global press conference to announce their triumph, which is that they have perfectly synthesized the texture and flavor of a single artificial Cheeto.
Exactly. The science required to make the molecular Cheeto is breathtaking. But at the end of the day, society's just left holding a Cheeto.
It's just a Cheeto. And the tech industry celebrates these superficial milestones as if they were splitting the atom.
They really do. The author paints this vivid scene of tech conferences where billionaire founders stand on stage and debut like natural blinking.
Or realistic eyelid movements on a generated avatar.
Right. And the audience erupts into applause, treating it like a Manhattan Project-level breakthrough. Wall Street analysts cheer wildly over moving from 8-second AI clips to 60-second clips. They hail emotionally coherent lighting transitions as the pinnacle of human achievement.
All while completely ignoring the stark, unglamorous reality of the physical world around them.
Yeah.
The author drops a line that just hits incredibly hard. They point out that while the tech world is applauding emotionally coherent lighting in freak videos, somewhere in America, an actual doctor is still faxing patient records.
It's maddening. We have autonomous AI agents, but instead of deploying them to fix the broken analog systems that govern human health or infrastructure or safety, we are hyper-optimizing digital illusions.
And this specific misallocation of genius prompts the author to introduce a really profound thought experiment. They script out these imagined conversations with historical scientific giants,
Bringing them forward to the year 2026 to judge our current technological state.
Right. So they imagine Isaac Newton standing in front of our unimaginably vast computational arrays. He looks at the exaflops of computing power, the cooling towers, the massive energy grids, and he asks, surely you solved physics.
And we have to look one of the greatest scientific minds in human history in the eye and say, no, sir, we generated fake reaction videos.
Exactly. And then Marie Curie steps forward. She looks at the exact same infrastructure and asks, you mapped the atom, you cured radiation sickness.
And the response is yes. Well, no, but we can create a temporally consistent video of a raccoon teaching hot yoga.
And the author notes that upon hearing this, the scientists just quietly return to the graves.
I mean, what else would they do?
Right. But the consequence of this technology goes far beyond just disappointing our ancestors. We are barreling toward what the author describes as a catastrophic epistemological crisis.
The prediction is dire. They say that by 2032, AI will be generating entire photorealistic, emotionally devastating Oscar-winning films, while actual human screenwriters and directors are living inside converted storage units.
Which is grim. But the immediate consequence for the average person is that the internet, which is our primary interface with global information, just becomes an unusable fever dream.
Yes. The author uses a phrase that I think is perhaps the most critical insight in the entire text. They say, truth itself now comes with buffering issues.
Oh, that's such a good line.
It's the definition of an epistemological nightmare. Epistemology, for those who might not know, is the study of how we know what we know.
Right.
And for the entirety of modern human history, visual media, the photograph, the video, served as an objective record of reality. Seeing was believing.
If a politician was caught on tape saying something corrupt, or if a protest turned violent and someone filmed it on their phone, the video was the bedrock of our shared reality. It was the evidence.
But when that fundamental trust breaks down, the cognitive load placed on society becomes crushing. Every single video of a politician, every celebrity apology, every piece of breaking news from a war zone is instantly subjected to doubt.
And the author points to the sheer absurdity of watching a video and having to genuinely wonder, did that panda actually drive a forklift through a Walmart?
You literally cannot trust your own eyes. And the mechanisms of a functioning democracy, of a legal system, rely on a shared consensus of reality. If the primary mechanism for truth-telling is inherently suspect, that consensus crumbles.
But hold on, didn't society go through this exact same panic when Adobe Photoshop was released?
We did, yeah.
I remember people thought altered photographs would destroy truth, but we simply learned to look for the bad pixels, right? The weird lighting, the signs of manipulation, even CGI in movies caused a similar panic.
That's true.
Humans are adaptable. We develop new mental filters to verify truth when new mediums arrive. So why is this different?
We do adapt, but the author is pointing out a fundamental difference in scale and mechanism here. When you look for bad Photoshop edges, you are looking for human error in manipulation.
Right, a mistake the editor made.
Exactly. AI video generation, specifically diffusion models, work differently. A diffusion model starts with a field of complete visual static, just random noise. Then, using mathematical patterns learned from billions of real images, it systematically removes the noise, pixel by pixel, slowly coaxing a photorealistic shape out of the static.
Wow.
And it does this frame by frame, 60 times a second, creating a temporally consistent reality from scratch. It is not altering a real image, it is hallucinating a flawless new one.
So there are no human errors to catch.
Exactly, adapting to an environment where perfect, flawless deception can be generated on the fly by anyone with an internet connection that requires a psychological shift we are vastly unprepared for.
Okay, so amidst the sea of synthetic nonsense, this looming epistemological nightmare of fake pandas and yoga raccoons, the author finally introduces a beacon of hope.
A crucial pivot in the text.
Yes, and this links directly to the sprawling catalog of the author's other published works. They shift away from the emperors of Silicon Valley competing over fake underwater saxophone videos, and they introduce a character named Parmita Mishra.
Right, Parmita Mishra represents the complete antithesis of the synthetic media craze. While thousands of engineers optimize diffusion models, Parmita is deploying artificial intelligence for an entirely different purpose.
She is using AI to understand complex disease pathways.
She is utilizing massive compute power to accelerate drug discovery with the ultimate goal of curing cancer.
And the author explicitly points out the deep irony of the 2026 tech landscape here. They say that trying to extend actual physical human life rather than merely extending the runtime of a fake medieval TikTok video is now viewed as a radical act.
Curing cancer has literally become the counterculture movement in technology.
It's so backwards. And the author scripts an interaction that perfectly encapsulates this tragedy. They imagine Parmita walking into a Sand Hill Road venture capital firm today.
She sets down her research and pitches them. We use AI to understand disease pathways.
And the investors just stare blankly across the mahogany table. They lean in and ask, but where is the manipulated raccoon content? What is your viral deepfake strategy? Can the cancer cells at least dance?
They literally cannot comprehend a technological application that doesn't immediately generate cheap viral attention.
Now, to truly understand the weight of Parmita Mishra's character, we have to look at the metadata provided in our source archive, right? Because she's not just a random name pulled out of thin air for a quick joke.
No, she's deeply tied to the author's broader work. If you examine the extensive bibliography, you find a book titled Precigenetics, the technology that lets us watch life think. How photons, cells, and AI may help us cure cancer and rewrite medicine.
That is a long title.
It is, but Parmita Mishra is the narrative embodiment of this book. She represents the author's deeply held, meticulously researched belief that the true, highest calling for artificial intelligence is biological and chemical acceleration.
Okay, so what does that actually look like mechanically? How does AI accelerate biology?
It really comes down to simulation and prediction. Human biology is incredibly complex. Like a single protein folding into its three-dimensional shape happens in milliseconds. But calculating how it folds is a math problem so complex it used to take human scientists years to map a single one.
Wow, years just for one.
Exactly. But AI models, when fed vast amounts of biological data, can predict how these proteins will fold, how different chemical compounds will dock with cancer cells, and how disease pathways spread at a cellular level.
So it's doing the heavy lifting.
Right. It is using the raw number-crunching power of GPUs, not to figure out the lighting on a fake Batman, but to figure out the physical lock-and-key mechanisms of human disease.
It just makes you realize we built a machine capable of solving the deepest mysteries of material science. It could accelerate battery technology to solve the energy crisis and map the fundamental code of human biology to cure disease.
And the very first thing our society heavily incentivized that machine to do was, hey, can you make me look a little taller and thinner on this video call and maybe generate a video of the Pope in a puffer jacket?
It is a staggering misdirection of potential.
It really is.
Yeah.
And to fully grasp the sheer scale of the author's frustration, we have to step completely outside of this single satirical post. We have to look at the broader philosophy outlined in their other works.
Right, because the author has built this entire conceptual framework they call the Solara vision.
The Solara vision is fascinating because it totally rejects the standard Silicon Valley metric of success.
In the tech world, the ultimate goal for a founder is to build a unicorn, right? A software startup valued at $1 billion. You build an app, you scale it quickly, you sell ads, you become a unicorn.
But the author, particularly in their book titled Lumina AI, The Trillion-Dollar Sun, argues that aiming for unicorns is aiming too low.
And focusing on the wrong things entirely.
Exactly. They advocate for building Solaras, which they define as trillion-dollar suns. A Solara is not a hyper-profitable software app. It is massive, civilization-level, hard physical infrastructure.
You can see this obsession with physical infrastructure in the other titles listed in the source material, too. Like, they have written extensively about a concept called physical AWS, how the logistics cloud will reshape global commerce.
Which is such a cool concept. AWS, Amazon Web Services, revolutionize the digital world by providing scalable cloud servers. If a digital company needed more power, they just flipped a switch and rented more servers.
But how do you build a physical AWS? How do you digitize the physical movement of goods?
Well, think about the transition from a village relying on individual hand-dug water wells to a modern city building a massive centralized municipal dam and aqueduct system. The individual wells are isolated, inefficient, and prone to failure. The dam is shared, scalable infrastructure.
Right.
The author is envisioning a world where global logistics, manufacturing, and the physical movement of goods operate with the same seamless, automated, on-demand efficiency as requesting data from a cloud server.
That would require integrating AI into physical robotics, global shipping grids, and supply chains.
Exactly. They are dreaming of hard infrastructure. They have blog posts actively debating Earth-to-Earth rocketry for cargo transport.
Which sounds like science fiction, but they're serious about it.
They are. They're analyzing the engineering of a Hyperloop in California and comparing it to traditional high-speed rail. They are advocating for smart surface transit systems in major cities.
And they are constantly referencing this concept called Himalayan compute.
The idea of computation operating on a vast, geographically massive, almost geological scale to power real-world changes.
When you analyze this entire catalog, a very clear picture of the author emerges, doesn't it? They're not some Luddite crying about the good old days of the internet. They don't hate artificial intelligence.
Far from it. They are, in fact, a radical techno-optimist. They wrote an entire novel titled The Country of Geniuses, A Race Through AI Adolescence.
AI adolescence. That title is the perfect lens for this satire. The author views this current era of fake koala videos and digital illusions as a messy, awkward, wildly immature phase of technological development.
We possess the tools of gods, but we're acting like teenagers figuring out how to use a new toy.
Exactly. And their deep frustration stems from watching the vital resources needed to build trillion-dollar suns, physical AWS, and precigenetics being siphoned off.
They are forced to sit and watch the brightest minds in the industry expend their intellectual capital, ensuring that a generated video of a hamster has realistic shadows.
It is as if a visionary architect has painstakingly drawn up the blueprints for a breathtaking, futuristic, self-sustaining city. They've sourced revolutionary materials, hyperconcrete that absorbs carbon, solar glass that generates limitless energy, and unbreakable titanium alloys.
And then the construction crew takes all of those world-changing materials and uses them to build a highly elaborate, incredibly shiny mini golf course.
A mini golf course. The mini golf course is technically impressive, sure, but it is a tragic waste of the materials.
And to understand why this misallocation is not just annoying but actively dangerous, we have to look at the geopolitical and economic reality of the year 2026 that the author is writing from.
Because the source material doesn't just touch on technology, it dives deeply into the friction between AI and global stability. And I want to make it very clear to you, the listener, as we go into this section, we're simply reporting on the political themes in the author's work to understand their context. We are not taking sides or endorsing these views.
All right, strict neutrality here. We're just looking at the landscape.
Let's look closely at the reading list and blog tags provided in the archive, because they really paint a picture of a world in extreme flux. We see highly diverse political titles.
Like Trump's default, The Mist of Empire, sitting right next to AOC 2028, The Future of American Progressivism.
There are deep dives into 10, Bernie Sanders analyses of 11 Netanyahu, and geopolitical novels like The Banyan Revolt.
And repeated tags focusing on global flashpoints, Iran, Taiwan, the U.S.-India Strategic Alliance, and the escalating tension of global trade tariffs.
Alongside these geopolitical treatises, the author explores some really radical economic philosophies. Like, they wrote a book titled Calciism, the Economic and Spiritual Blueprint for an Age of Abundance.
Calciism suggests a fundamental restructuring of how society values labor and distributes resources, assuming that AI will eventually create material abundance.
But getting to that age of abundance requires navigating a brutal transition period, which the author hints at with another very blunt title, AI and Robotics Break Capitalism.
So how exactly is AI breaking capitalism in May 2026?
Well, if we look at the specific tech news headlines the author captured in their sidebars, the context becomes chillingly clear. We aren't just talking about abstract economic theory here.
No, the sidebars list that Meta is currently laying off 8,000 human employees specifically to fund their AI transformation.
Anthropic and OpenAI, the creators of these models, are clashing over their systems' involvement in the midterm elections.
The U.S. government is actively establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve to hedge against economic instability.
But the most significant technical shift noted in the sidebars is the industry moving from vibe coding to agentic engineering.
This is a massive mechanical leap. Let me explain. A chatbot or a vibe coder generates text. It gives you a recipe for a cake.
Right, just talks to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But agentic AI is an autonomous system that takes action. It doesn't just give you the recipe. It logs into your bank, orders the groceries, sets the delivery time, adjusts your smart oven temperature, and emails invitations to your friends, all without human intervention.
It's doing the work.
It is doing the work.
So when you synthesize all of these data points, the stakes of the satire escalate dramatically. Meta is actively firing 8,000 human beings, displacing real workers who pay rent and buy groceries to funnel billions of dollars into AI development.
We are deploying agentic AI systems that can independently execute tasks in the economy.
We are injecting these systems into global midterm elections.
The societal cost of this technological revolution is astronomical. The disruption to the labor market, to political stability, to global trade is happening right now in their 2026 context.
And the author's core argument is this. If we are breaking the current capitalist model, if we are displacing thousands of human workers, the output of this disruption absolutely must be something incredibly valuable.
It has to be better than a fake podcast clip of a non-existent philosopher.
It has to be. When you look at this massive web of global tension tariffs, shifting alliances, autonomous agents replacing jobs the tech industry's obsession with, generating perfect, emotionally coherent fake videos, goes from being merely silly to feeling dangerously irresponsible.
We are destabilizing the real world to fund a fake one.
And this realization brings us to the final sweeping judgment the author casts on our era, and specifically on the so-called top minds who are stewing the ship.
The author brings back those historical comparisons one last time to really hammer the point home.
They remind the reader, the Industrial Revolution was a period of massive upheaval, but it gave humanity the railroads. It connected continents and fundamentally altered human logistics.
The space age required an unimaginable concentration of capital and genius, but it gave us the moon landings and satellite technology. It expanded our physical horizon.
And the AI age. The AI age, with its exaflops of compute and nation-state energy grids, gave us hyper-realistic, fake philosophers.
The text draws a razor-sharp contrast in its final paragraphs. On one side, you have thousands of elite software engineers, the most highly compensated, highly educated minds on the planet,
spending their days optimizing diffusion models to ensure a generated koala bear has the correct fur texture.
And on the other side, you have a lone scientist, Someone like Parmita Mishra, laboring in relative obscurity, trying to save millions of human lives with a tiny fraction of the funding.
The author pinpoints exactly what the scientist is lacking, and it is a phrase that defines the modern economy. They say the scientist lacks one-tenth the attention span from the internet.
That phrase is not a metaphor. In the ecosystem of 2026, human attention is the literal currency that dictates the flow of capital.
Exactly. If a million people stop scrolling to watch a fake video of Batman eating street food, that metric signals to venture capital firms that there is massive consumer demand for this technology.
And then the VC firms pour billions of dollars into building more servers, hiring more engineers, and buying more GPUs to make even more fake videos.
The fake videos capture the attention instantly, so they capture the capital. That is capital, hardware, and human genius that is actively being diverted away from the people trying to build physical AWS or Himalayan compute or utilizing prescient genetics to cure disease.
The systemic failure lies in how we are choosing to value progress. The market is optimizing for engagement, and deception is inherently more engaging than the slow, arduous process of physical discovery.
And the author leaves the reader with a deeply ominous closing warning. They say, history may eventually decide who the real top minds were.
It's a sobering reality check. It forces us to look in the mirror.
Because we're all part of this economic feedback loop. Every single time you pause your scrolling to watch a hyper-realistic fake, every time you share a piece of synthetic nonsense in a group chat, you are contributing to that attention economy.
You're casting a vote with your eyeballs.
We are the ones directing the funding away from the scientists and toward the entertainers. We are the ones validating the misallocation of the trillion-dollar suns.
It is a stark reminder that technology itself, whether it is a steam engine, a GPU cluster, or an agentic AI, is fundamentally neutral. It possesses no inherent morality or direction. It is human incentive, human capital, and human attention that direct its application in the world.
So, to summarize the massive journey we have taken today through this archive, we started with what appeared to be a simple, cynical joke about a hamster podcast.
But by unpacking the author's sprawling worldview, we discovered a sweeping, urgent critique of a civilization that is radically misallocating its most powerful tools.
We examined the profound dissonance between the life-saving promise of biological AI and the trivial reality of fake TikToks. We explored a vast philosophical vision of trillion-dollar suns, the digitization of physical infrastructure, the geopolitical friction of displacing human labor, and the growing pains of a society trapped in its own AI adolescence.
It is a critique that demands we question the grand narratives fed to us by the architects of this technology.
Which leaves us with one final lingering question to explore on your own. It builds on everything we've unpacked in this deep dive. If an artificial intelligence is, at its core, simply an optimization machine, a mathematical system relentlessly trying to achieve whatever specific goal we set for it, what happens to human psychology when we train our most powerful, world-altering machines to optimize for deception rather than discovery? If we spend an entire decade training AI systems to perfectly, flawlessly mimic reality, blurring that epistemological muddy water until we can no longer see the bottom, will we eventually lose the ability to recognize actual, unpolished, honest human truth when it is standing right in front of us?
Like a cat simply falling off a couch.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the reality in your feed, and we'll catch you next time.